Coming up on today's episode, updates on the Starhopper. Is it about to hop? New White House budget could put the kibosh on the SLS, and the Model Y reveal. Let's get ludicrous. Hi there and welcome to Our Ludicrous Future. This is the podcast where we talk about all the cool, fun future stuff that's making our world awesome so that tomorrow's world can be ludicrous. I think that's the new intro. I think I'm going to stick with that. All right. I'm Joe Scott with the Answers with Joe YouTube channel. With me is Tim Dotterino.
Hi, it's me, Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut from those internets. And with us is... Oh, wait. He's not with us at this exact moment because he's actually heading down to see the Model Y reveal
he's not with
as
us
we
anymore.
speak. He's no longer with us.
He went out to a farm where he's comfortable.
And he's running in the fields until he passes. This is going to be kind of like a... You guys won't probably know too much of a difference, but this is going to be sort of like a two-parter. We're going to record this. We're recording this in 2 different days. So first it's Joe and I talking. I can't record tomorrow. So then it's Joe and Ben talking. And then hopefully this will be one somewhat cohesive video. What do you think odds of that actually happening are?
None. No, so yeah, Ben is at the Model Y event in LA, so he was just very busy today. It's Thursday when we're recording this, so he's not going to be able to join us for this part of it. But what we're basically going to do, like Tim just said, we're going to talk about some stuff tomorrow after the Model Y reveal. I will be talking with Ben, and so just stick around to the end. It'll just be a little bit of a two-parter.
Yeah.
Hopefully kind of two-parter.
Yeah, and hopefully Joe and I seem to have some kind of audio glitches too today. It's just been one of those days where nothing works. So there's a chance one of us will be talking and ask the other person a question. The other person will just be going, huh? And
yeah, it should sound fine for you guys on your end, but we might from time to time be like, can you repeat that?
Yeah.
Huh?
So bear with us a little bit today, but the important thing is we have some... How is this that almost every week? Like, I don't feel like any week we're just like, there's nothing to talk about. Like, I feel like there's a ton to talk about since last week. Like, tons.
I feel like there's all like Tesla just kind of always sucks the oxygen out of the room. Like, there's just always some new crazy Tesla development that's happened in the last week. But I guess sometimes I feel like that sort of overshadows what's going on with the space stuff. But I guess we got some stuff on the space side to talk about this week too.
We have plenty to talk about. Yeah. Should we get right to it?
Let's jump into it.
Yeah, I think...
Do it.
I think the biggest thing... not the biggest thing, but the first thing. Because there's been a lot of stuff. All right, let me... I'm going to hop over here. I'm going to show you Cowboy Dan on Twitter. It's at Cowboy Dan... Pash? I don't actually know how you say his last name, but Paasch. He's a great follow if you're interested in trying to keep up with what SpaceX is doing down in Boca Chica. Well, technically in Brownsville. I've gotten some, not mad, but people going, Boca Chica isn't a place. It's a beach, but it's like, that's what everyone's calling it.
A beach is not a place, people.
Yeah.
You learned that here.
Like, it's called Brownsville. Say Brownsville. Like, but no one is saying Brownsville, so... Sorry, it's forever destined to just be...
Our 3 listeners in Brownville have been offended this whole time.
I know, that might be. So I'll go ahead and say Boca Chica Brownsville. That way no one's mad. But Dan does an awesome... Too many syllables, true. But Dan does such a good job of...
Just go to BC.
Chronologing. I don't know. How do you say that? He does a good job of keeping
Chronology?
track. Sure. Yeah, he does that. He keeps track of everything going on down there with the Starhopper. And, of course, the big news this week is SpaceX actually has a Raptor engine down next to their Starhopper and installing it probably about as we speak. That's huge news. What do you think about that, Joe? Did you hear about all this?
I heard about it. I guess... I'm going to sound a little bit stupid for a second, but, they had those pictures where there were some kind of engine on it, and I guess dumb me thought that was the Raptor engines that were on it. But I guess they were just kind of for a display, or maybe they were just kind of like putting it in to make sure that the space worked for the engines or something. I don't know, but...
Yep.
So I guess I saw this, and everybody was like, whoa, it's there, and I was kind of like, it wasn't already there?
Yeah. Those were just, like, fit test and looking just for those initial pictures. This is not, I don't think this is like insider information or anything, but I think they're under quite a bit of pressure with their investors, because they of course have private investors. They aren't an IPO company, but I think I've been hearing people mention this a few times, and people just kind of whispering that like they're under a lot of pressure to get this thing flying and to develop on this and really push an unbelievably aggressive timeline on this whole program. So when you see things
I wonder why that is.
I think it's just I think the investors have been promised that once Starhopper's online, or Starship is truly online delivering payloads, I think it's just game over. And I think they've been promised that. I mean, I believe that too.
Do you think that
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Sound stuff. No, I was wondering if the new Glenn had anything to do with that, since like Blue Origin has their facilities underway, and you know, that's kind of on its. I mean, is that like a competition thing that they're concerned about? Or?
I think for sure. I think New Glenn is a big threat to Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. I think it has a chance, if it's successful and it does what it's supposed to do, it can easily potentially deliver payloads that only Falcon Heavy can. It could potentially carry almost 2 payloads that'd be destined for Falcon Heavy, and potentially be cheaper than Falcon Heavy. So of course, we don't have the prices on that yet, but it has that potential. It's a serious, significant risk almost to the near monopoly that SpaceX currently has on that market. So in order to trump that, they have to get this thing flying as close to when New Glenn starts flying too. And I think that's what they're trying to do. I think that's why I think you're exactly right. There's a lot of pressure. New Glenn it raised the bar. It did people might not agree with me, but it did definitely raise the bar.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, I can't think of anything else that would be a direct threat. I mean, maybe Rocket Lab, although that's kind of going down the other side of the spectrum. It's not the super heavy, but I mean, ULA has the Vulcan, but that's still a few years out, and the SLS, we can talk about that later, but who knows what's going to happen with that. But excuse me. But that's the only thing I can think of that would be like a reason for them to rush things out, unless they just are just trying to charge ahead. But I feel like I kind of jumped in and you were going to say more about that, so sorry about that.
Well, so let's just kind of keep going here about what this means. This is serial number 2 of the actual engine. The first one, they experienced a failure on it. Nothing detrimental. They didn't lose the engine, but I hear that it did definitely like go boomy kind of, but it was not as controlled of a boomy as you want with a rocket engine, but a bit of a boomy. But it survived, and it's going to be able to be refurbished and all that stuff. But this is number 2, and we still don't know for sure. We've not had confirmation of whether or not this has been fired at all, but I think it has. I think it's been already fired at McGregor a handful of times, and it's ready to start powering small, tiny hover and hops with Starhopper, which is nuts. So this is some of the progress. These are great progress pictures by RGV Aerial Photography. Again, RGV is another group that has just been staying on top of this. I'm really proud of the people down there in Texas that have been just kicking butt on this coverage. There's yeehaw, Cowboy Dan, Nomad on the NASA spaceflight forums, bought a house. There's like only literally maybe 10 houses down here. Do you know about this?
Like, he bought a house just to keep an eye on what's going on. He now lives like right next door to this stuff, and it's hilarious. I mean, because there were some houses and SpaceX tried to buy them all, but he snuck in there and bought a house before they could sweep it up. So can I this picture you got up right now for those who are watching on YouTube, look how big that thing is. Like, I've never seen it from this angle before, but look at the trucks next to it. It's dwarfing it.
Yes.
It didn't occur to me how big the Starhopper was.
It's huge, and this is subscale. I mean, it's the right diameter. We're getting a sense of the width of this vehicle, but don't forget, this is This is tiny compared to if you're not looking at this. Look, I mean, this is still one, especially now that it doesn't have the nose cone. It's about half the height, maybe even less than half the height of what the actual upper stage of Starship will be. Then you have the booster. The super heavy booster is 5 times taller than this. Like, this is going to be this is a huge, huge vehicle. And hopefully there's a chance we might start seeing this thing hop in the next week or two. And at first, they're going to be literally...
Wow, that's a bold statement right there.
They've done pressure tests of it. Let me keep going through Dan's feed here, because, again, Dan just does such a good job of staying on top of this. So thank you, Dan, if you happen to be listening. But they actually filled it. I believe they just used nitrogen and pressurized it, did a pressure leak test, make sure all the valves and everything work in these tanks. Because it is a pretty rudimentary setup for now. They're using a lot thicker gauge steel. Yeah. It's literally basically a water tower. But it's just a pressure vessel. It's just there to hold pressure. Yeah. And
do you think they're going to put that top part back on there at any point? I mean, they don't need it. It's just for show, right?
They don't need it. But they are building something new. Look at this. And I don't know if this is actually, I don't know if people are now speculating this actually might be the first bit of the actual fuselage for the first orbital test vehicle. Because it's starting to look almost too tall for the nose cone. The nose cone tapers sooner than this, normally, or about now. So it might start tapering in and becoming the nose cone. But everyone's speculating. But then down on the ground, you see what looks like tapered sections, potentially, where it would taper in. And this, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that. At this point, who knows? You can't keep up with SpaceX right now. It's super exciting. And
it's a lot of fun.
It's like a game, just trying to keep up with what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
It makes you realize, I think they're about at this pace all the time. Like, I think this is their normal, this is, I think, a little extra aggressive right now. At this current moment, I think they're pushing a little extra hard. But I think behind the scenes, behind closed doors, this is close to how fast they work on things. And that's just not normal. That's just not how the aerospace industry traditionally works. It's maybe it did in the 60s, but we've slowed down a lot since then. But SpaceX seems to have gotten back on that train. So, and about the hopping test. So what they're going to do is they're going to install it. I think they already have the mounts and everything under there. That's why we were able to see the test fit engines that they had for those pictures. They already have the mounts there. Most of the plumbing's kind of ready to go. And the actual hopper seems to be ready. It pressure tested and all that stuff. So I think soon we're going to start seeing like wet dress rehearsals where they fully actually fuel it with methane and liquid oxygen. And we'll start seeing photos and stuff and video of like fuel flowing through the engine. And then they're going to try and hot fire the engine. So this is almost like a vertical test stand at first. And which is going to be nuts because hopefully it doesn't just absolutely destroy all the concrete below it. I mean, that's a legitimate concern for sure when it's a engine that's twice as powerful as a Merlin. Granted, the Merlin lands on concrete, and it might even be closer to concrete, but this is twice as powerful as that. So we'll see. And Elon even mentioned on Twitter here that, it might, I asked him like, it basically doesn't this have the potential to destroy the concrete and the pad below it or whatever? And he just goes, yeah, it might break. Like, look at this. I love this answer. He just goes,
it might break.
He goes, where was it? Oh, yeah. When that thing starts hopping, will there be a flame trench or something? How will it not destroy the pad and the legs and stuff? Seems like pointing a Raptor at concrete from only 10 feet away would be crazy. And he goes, yeah, it might break. I love it.
Well, you won't know until you set it off. You got to look.
Exactly. So at first it will be tied down basically, and they'll be doing little tiny hops that way. So.
Okay, so the first ones they're not actually going to leave the ground. They're just kind of like just light them and make sure that the rocket doesn't fall apart, the whole structure doesn't fall apart, and the concrete doesn't break.
Yeah, exactly. And lighting just one for now. And it sounds like those first tests will just be a single engine. It's tiny because it does, I believe, apparently have enough thrust to weight ratio to actually start to do a hover with a single engine, and it'll be tethered down. It'll just go up and come back down. Yeah. Simple.
So just little bits at a time, and then they just start taking it up and up. Yeah.
Yep. And then eventually they'll put 3 engines on there.
If you're going to start with it actually being tied down, why put things off? Why not just light that candle? See what happens.
Yeah.
Where's it going to go?
Yeah, exactly. I think they just want to make sure that they're not going to lose their, number 2 engine so far. And I think once they have confidence with throttling it and stuff, then they'll install 2 more and work on that. And we'll start seeing some crazy stuff then. It's
exciting.
Going to be nuts. So that's kind of your update on Starhopper. Any other thoughts on that?
Just can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
I wish Brownsville was closer to Dallas.
I know. You're about as far away as it. You're like as far away as it is I am, I feel like. I mean, it's not a day's drive.
Dallas might be closer to you than it is to Brownsville.
That's nuts to think about. So for those that don't know, I live in Iowa, and I think I can get down to Dallas in about 12 hours. Probably. 10 or 12.
I'm speculating. I don't know if it's actually that far, but I do know that it's further from Dallas to El Paso than from El Paso to Los Angeles. Like if I were to drive to Los Angeles, it would take longer to get to El Paso than the second leg.
That sounds insane to me, but I'll maybe believe you a little bit. Yeah, maybe just a little. I was going to look it up, but then I hit the wrong button, and now it all started over, so never mind. Okay, so we have another big thing to talk about this week. What are your thoughts on all this crazy? We've seen some new updates on the White House's 2020 NASA budget. It's very different.
Yeah.
Very different. What do you think?
There's been a lot of talk about it. Scott Manley did a video that I saw earlier. Hi, Scott. That talked about its effect on the SLS, and the way he kind of broke it down was that it looks like, there were like 4 different versions of the SLS, kind of different block versions going forward, and it looks like maybe the first one will actually come to pass, but nothing beyond that. It sounds like they're kind of focusing their attention to the Lunar Gateway project as opposed to other things. One of the casualties was a satellite called W-FIRST. Let me look it up. I don't want to say it wrong.
Wide Field Infrared Survey Telescope. I just happen to have it pulled up, so don't think that I'm smarter.
Yeah, but you sound so smart now. Okay. But yeah, the Wide Field Infrared Survey Telescope. So this was almost going to be like the next generation of, say, Kepler, another planet hunting telescope. Sorry for the clear in the throat, guys. But it's it was a big important satellite telescope that was going to be going up, and it looks like it's going to get killed completely. But what does this mean for the SLS? What does this mean for Orion? I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting conversation to say whether or not we need to be focusing more on the Lunar Gateway. I need to do a video. Have you done a video on the Lunar Gateway?
I haven't yet.
No? Because just the rockets that'll get it up there?
Yeah, for the most part, especially because it just seems to kind of keep moving around. I don't know. It's a hard one to pin down right now.
It changes, yeah.
And especially because the lunar orbiting platform, Lunar Gateway, I think they're basically just calling it Gateway now. I think it's kind of settled into just being called Gateway.
It was LOP G for a while, and now it's just Gateway.
Yeah, so just to describe this for you guys, it's supposed to be an international partnership where, NASA provides, of course, a lot of the bulk work, including originally proposed to be using SLS to get everything out on this lunar orbiting platform. Like it's out. It needs a big rocket to be able to put stuff like this into lunar orbit. Yeah. These are some pretty big chunks of gear here.
It's basically the ISS around the moon.
It is. It's a stripped down version of ISS. But one of the most important things about this is that it has its own power and propulsion system. The ISS really does not at all. It requires reboosts and any kind of changes to any of its energy requires from currently a Progress vehicle. It doesn't have its own propulsion system. And the Gateway has its own. I think they're planning to use the Hall thrusters that have been underdeveloped that are twice as powerful as anything else out there.
The ion thruster, yeah.
I believe there's, I don't remember if it's the Vasimir or the Hall. I think that might be up in the air too, which type of thruster, but it is like a high efficiency ion or xenon engine or whatever that uses electricity and can make it so it can change orbits and change its inclination around the moon and go over the poles, go over, which is really cool. That is awesome. But then it
kind of blows my mind that the ISS doesn't have that.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised.
It totally blew my mind when I found that out.
Like, why don't they just why don't they put that power pack up on the ISS and then repurpose it for Gateway?
Oh, the entire ISS?
And no, not
fly it
push
out to the moon?
No. That would require a huge, like, that would require basically an SLS in space to push,
Yeah.
you know. No, but get the power pack up there, the actual ion propulsion, use it for station keeping on the ISS, test it out, give it a good shakedown, make sure everything's good to go, detach it, and then throw it back up, you know, when it's ready for the gateway. But here's, okay, so to continue on the gateway, it requires, you know, ESA would have to make a service module, basically, and a HAB module. Canada would, of course, provide a Canadarm or some kind of robotics for which they're the first ones to sign a contract saying, yes, we are in. We would help with this. They'd be looking at, like, JAXA doing a logistics module, Roscosmos kind of like a node. So it is an international, you know, it is an international partnership. My big question is why? Like, I think Gateway's cool, but I don't think it's really the answer. Here's what I don't like. I saw Bridenstine talk twice 2 weeks ago, and I actually am really warming up to Bridenstine. I feel like he's actually making some of those changes that we've wanted for a long time. A lot of the things a lot of those, why don't they just, I feel like he's pushing for, and seeing the value in commercial partnerships. He's seeing the value they're definitely exploration heavy. They want to go explore, and you can see that. And I feel like he's out there doing a lot of talks. He's very charismatic, and he's out really trying to sell some of these things that I feel like, you know, previously I really liked Charles Bolden. He was great administrator, but I think he was a lot more behind the scenes. Bridenstine is kind of trying to become more of a face of NASA, which at this point I think NASA needs.
He's a giant cheerleader for sure.
Yeah,
for
and
NASA.
I think that's great. I think NASA needs some of that support and someone to try to help sell what NASA is doing. But I saw him speak twice, and both times he goes, "We're going back to the moon. We're going to stay at the moon with commercial partners. We're going to make it sustainable. We're going to do all these things through the Lunar Orbiting Gateway and SLS and Orion." Like, no. You had it right. You had it right when you said we're going to go do these things, but let the commercial partners fill that gap. Don't tell people how NASA's going to do that. That's what NASA does wrong, is when they have things like this of like, we have to do it using these things that we have been in development for 12 years. Like, instead of saying like, here's what we want, now bid on it, which is what they're doing for the moon missions. You know, those moon missions are like, here's our goals. Send us your proposals. So I don't like when they do. You're not
talking about the past moon missions. You're talking about future moon missions.
Yeah, because he has. I don't know if you heard about the commercial moon program, basically, where they're going to have like 10 small companies, like Moon Express and Masson Aerospace, giving proposals for lunar missions, and they have to do. They're not big lunar landers. They aren't crewed at all. There's no one on it. But you know, these are small little, kind of almost like the Google Lunar X Prize. Like they're similar class to that, like small little things that are going to do some sampling of ice and things like that, things that we haven't done before. But they're doing it on the same type of front that Commercial Crew Program was, where people submit bids and submit a whole proposal, and that saves everybody money. It incentivizes them to be cheap and aggressive, and saying things like, here's what we're going to do with the Gateway, here's our program, and we're going to just hire this person to do this. It's backwards. It's the old way. It's cost plus contracting, and it has proven to not work. Like, we have SLS and Orion that have been in development for years and years and years, way over budget and way behind, because there is no incentive for them to actually get it done. They actually are incentivized to go slow and have delays. Like, that's the way the program's set up.
I saw a picture the other day of an Orion splashdown test from like 2013, 2014, something like that.
Yep.
And I was like, I forgot that existed. Because you never hear anything about it. You hear so much about Starliner and Crew Dragon and everything, and that's great. Those are working so far. But I thought that Orion was completely dead, but I guess they're still working on it. There's like 2 or 3 guys working on it or something. I don't know, but...
So Orion is, I think, Orion's way more ready than SLS. Orion is still massively over budget. But it is truly a deep space spacecraft. It is, radiation hardened, has all these things that even the commercial crew vehicles don't have on it. It's huge too. It is really big. Like, it's hard to appreciate how big it is.
Maybe we should say what Orion is, just for anybody listening that maybe is not familiar with it.
Good call. The Orion Capsule.
Do you want to take that?
The Orion Capsule was basically designed to ride on top of originally the Constellation program. It was supposed to ride on top of the Ares 5 and Ares 1 even. It's like a traditional capsule, can carry 7 people. Looks a lot like, a enlarged, much bigger 21st century Apollo capsule. It's developed, its prime contractor is Lockheed Martin. It has a service module actually built by ESA, so that's already done. ESA has sent, and we've done shakedown tests with the European service module. I mean, Orion's been ready for its first. So in 2014, you're right, December 5th, I think 2014, Orion did the EFT-1 mission, and that was on top. They actually put it on top of a Delta IV Heavy. And there was mostly kind of a shakedown test and a heat shield test was the big thing too. And what they did is the Delta IV Heavy took it up, did a highly elliptical orbit. I think, I think even beyond stationary orbit, geostationary orbit. It went on a pretty highly elliptical orbit, and it came back really fast to test the heat shield. It did not have a service module attached, I don't believe. Maybe it did. I don't think it did. That I might need to get fact checked on. But it was a shakedown of the vehicle in 2014. And really, I mean, the thing seems to be, more or less ready to go for EM1, which is what was supposed to be going on SLS. Now, SLS, of course, is the rocket that is essentially reused space shuttle components. So they want to repurpose the RS-25s that the space shuttle used. It's going to repurpose and reuse basically the space shuttle boosters, but add a segment. So the idea was and it's literally basically taking the external fuel tank of the space shuttle, stretching it out, and instead of having a space shuttle on the orbiter on the side, you stick an upper stage on top of that and then you stick the Orion capsule on, and you end up with a vehicle, the most powerful vehicle, and the most delta V of any vehicle ever made. And it all sounds great until we're 14 years into this thing, and SLS is still way behind, way over budget. So that led Jim Bridenstine to say something the other day that I can't believe he said. And do you know what that is?
Go for it.
Do you know what it was, though? Did you hear what he said?
I'm not sure, honestly.
So he goes,
you're setting this up, man.
They really want Orion to fly its first mission around the moon for EM1. And they want it to be done in 2020. They want it done before Trump's presidency is up for grabs, basically, right? And this is a directive from the White House, and I get it. Trump wants to have his name. Everyone wants a cool mission, and this would be a big mission. This would be a mission around the moon, no people on it, but it would still be the first time we've really sent a crewed capsule, crew capable capsule out beyond low Earth orbit, really. I guess besides EFT-1, but it'd be really cool. It'd be a great mission, a full shakedown of the Orion capsule, and the biggest thing is it takes an SLS to do that, because this thing is unbelievably heavy. I think with the service module, I think it's 30 tons or something with the service module. This thing is huge. It's a really big spacecraft. So it takes something like SLS to actually send it out to a lunar, on a lunar trajectory. And this is just a lunar flyby. It's not a lunar orbit, just a lunar flyby. Mm-hmm. And he said the other day, he goes, in order to hold that 2020 date, I think we're looking at commercial partners. And that's nuts. He even mentioned how you do that would be to fly Orion and the service module up on one flight, potentially with something like Falcon Heavy. There's only 2 vehicles that can even get it to low Earth orbit. Falcon Heavy and Delta IV Heavy are the only 2 vehicles capable of getting this thing into low Earth orbit. So then you need, from there, you fly another Delta IV Heavy or Falcon Heavy, and that has to have a kick stage that's capable of sending it out on this trajectory out to the moon. And they're considering that. How on earth could they maybe get that ready to go still by 2020 at this point? Because that requires a low Earth orbit rendezvous where those 2 things need to dock.
Yeah.
So you have to.
So it would be two launches, one kick stage and one with the module,
Yep.
and then they would rendezvous and.
Yep. So now you need to develop a docking system for an upper stage that can, which they probably could do at this point. Like they have the other end of the docking coupler for the Orion, but I mean, this is still a lot of work. It's not some easy breezy. We're just gonna stick this thing together and you know, it's not Kerbal Space Program. Like it's really hard to do that type of thing. So but they're getting bids for it already by like next week. They're going to look at proposals. So here's a cool idea. This is what I could almost see. How awesome would it be to see a Falcon Heavy shoot up the actual service module and the Orion capsule, right? Then send up a Delta IV Heavy, but nothing on top. Literally an aerodynamic nose cone. And then because actually what's funny is that the upper stage of the Delta IV Heavy is the Delta Cryogenic upper stage. It's a hydrogen-powered upper stage with a single RL-10 engine. That's the exact upper stage that SLS had for this mission. Literally, it's that stage on top of all the other things that we talked about earlier, the 4 RS-25s and all that. So I need someone to run this math for me, but I think if you didn't have a payload on top of a Delta IV Heavy, I think the two boosters in the center core of the Delta IV Heavy could almost get a near fully fueled upper stage into low Earth orbit. And then you have literally about the exact same thing you would have had with SLS after a rendezvous and docking.
Between those two launches.
And when
that kind of says a lot about what the SLS is capable of, or would be capable of.
Yeah, which then brings SLS into, if you can do this, if you can do in 2 launches what SLS can do in 1, yes, that logistically can be a bigger problem. Yes, that can be more difficult, requires some development. But if it's literally a fifth the cost of SLS and readily available tomorrow, that's hard to argue with. And that's why SLS is really, now that they're actually evaluating a legit replacement for it, SLS is in trouble. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, this is like, if they do 2 commercial launches to send the Orion capsule up around the moon, which is one of the only things SLS, was saying it could do that nothing else can do, that's really a nail in the coffin. And they're also looking at like the Jupiter or Europa Clipper.
The Europa Clipper, yeah.
They're even considering that on a commercial launch vehicle now too. And that was another thing that was earmarked as like only SLS can do this. And yes, only SLS can get it on a direct to Jupiter, profile where it doesn't have to do any gravity assists. But then people argue, well, if it's going to be 3 years before SLS is ready, you can launch tomorrow with like a Falcon Heavy for 1/10 the price, and by the time it does the lunar flyby, it's on the same trajectory as for the freaking SLS. So there goes. Yeah.
It would take longer to get there, but to actual timeline, it would probably be about the same. Even.
And cheaper, way cheaper. Forget the cost of the launch. We're still talking about years. Almost every year, SLS gets about $1 billion of development. So, like, 3 more years to get SLS actually ready and flying is another $3 billion for maybe 1 or 2 missions. I'm starting to think SLS is dead. We'll see. I think next week, because I think they're already talking about next week having these commercial providers having bids out on the table. And if we see those, and which we probably will, it's NASA, so they have to kind of tell us about these types of things. If we see those and they go with this is very close to probably the end of SLS.
How do you feel about that?
I've said this before that I am a sunk cost fallacy. I'm so sad that it's taken primarily, unfortunately, Boeing this long to get the SLS going and to get SLS to where it's at, because it's still so far behind. Like, it has a lot of the infrastructure stuff is ready. It has, like the mobile launch tower that's crooked is ready. It has the tank is pretty much ready. The engines, they've been slowly, Aerojet Rocketdyne slowly ramping up the whatever they're doing with it. It's like this engine's flown more than any other engine in the world, basically, on the space shuttle. They have hours of data on this thing. It's just been frustrating to see that it is taking so long. But then, that being said, we're so dang close. I never got to see a space shuttle launch. If I could see and hear RS-25's roar and then those massive solid rocket boosters.
Solid rockets, yeah.
I mean, that's hard to...
Shake the ground.
Oh, my... It would be nuts. Like,
yeah.
That would be crazy.
Sometimes I look at the old space shuttle launches and I'm just literally blown away by the solid rocket. They're just so powerful. It's just insane how big those things
They're
are.
nuts. And, like, I definitely didn't appreciate the space shuttle until I start watching videos of it and stuff. And when you watch it do its roll program, that's just, like, the most America, you know, like, I don't know. There's something about it that just makes me, like, probably because he grew up with, like, that image on posters and stuff, you know, just, and you're just like, oh, singing the Star Spangled Banner every morning or whatever, like. It just
there was a Subaru commercial, or maybe it wasn't Subaru, but it was some car commercial just like a year or so ago, and it was supposed to. I'm totally paraphrasing and screwing it up, but it was supposed to show how like futuristic this car was, and by doing their way of doing it was showing it like driving up. And this kid was looking out the window and watching the space shuttle take off or something. But it was a space shuttle in it, and they were like trying to show how futuristic it was. And I'm like, so it's like 7 years old? Is that the message you're getting?
Really?
That's a dead. Yeah, I remember seeing it as being like, who approved this? That's the dumbest commercial I've ever seen.
Jeez, people in commercial, like, come on, guys.
So here's my thoughts about the SLS thing. So there's always. Since I've really started following this, I've been curious about the fact that there's like a race to the small and a race to the big when it comes to rockets. Like simultaneously, you got New Glenn and you got BFR now, Starship. These bigger rockets going on, but there's also this sort of race to the small with, say, Rocket Lab. Mm-hmm. And this whole idea of, well, we have this big, huge rocket that's taking forever, talking about the SLS, it's taking forever to get going, but it's the only one that can do these big, huge projects because we need that kind of power. And then it's like, oh, well, there's this other way we can do it, or we can take slightly smaller rockets and do 2 of them, and it costs less money, and we can still do the whole thing. To me, it's like that's sort of indicative of that whole sort of, not race to the small necessarily, but like we're sort of paring down. We're saying, hey, let's do more things with less, I guess, and smaller rockets, and we're being more creative about it. So I think that's cool, and I would definitely, especially the Europa Clipper, I want to get that thing out there for crying out loud. Mm-hmm. I would definitely be cool about them doing those steps now and not like sinking more money into SLS that just doesn't seem to be going anywhere. At the same time, I worry a little bit about the commercialization of space, making everything 100% commercial and private, because I think there's just certain things that just need to be pure science, you know. And as long as there's a monetary incentive or a profit motive, I'm not against the profit motive, and it works really well. And I mean, obviously, we wouldn't be having Blue Origin and SpaceX and all these guys and this whole exciting thing that's happening right now, but. And maybe this isn't a good correlation, but like, you know, think about all that we got out of the Hubble.
Oh yeah,
there was no money to be made on the Hubble,
right.
But like it completely changed our understanding of the universe in so many different ways, and it just worries me when I see things going purely commercial that we're going to lose some of that pure science that is necessary.
I disagree.
I'm conflicted on it, but
yeah, let me explain why I think it's the opposite, because by freeing up, you know, and saving money, literally, if we're able to develop a thing that says, hey, listen, we could actually do your Europa Clipper mission, but we're going to save you $1.5 billion to get that same mission going. I mean, that's totally a win-win. That frees up more money for the science aspect of it. You know, and you know, looking at the Hubble Space Telescope.
I guess those are two different things, the rocket side and the science side. I guess those are two different things.
And for now, we are to the point where we finally have an infrastructure and the ability to have commercial providers actually bidding on this stuff and able to deliver that stuff, you know, at a really genuinely impressive cost, you know? Like, it's finally happening. I don't think, well, you know, I think NASA's job should be the customer. And that's something Jim Bridenstine has been saying this whole time. So now they're looking at privatizing the science even. which is still saying this is what science we want. So imagine if Hubble Space Telescope, or a perfect example, imagine James Webb, instead of NASA saying, here's our plans, now we're going to just basically pay you to build it, and then you tell us how much it costs, and then we're going to, we'll just foot the bill. Like, that's what's been happening with James Webb Space Telescope for the past 17 years or whatever it is. So imagine now, instead, what if they're like, here's what we want. We want this high of resolution, this blah, blah, this blah, 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 blah. Give us your proposals. And Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin and, and Raytheon or whatever, like all these companies gave bids and said, here you go, here's our proposal for a telescope capable of doing this. And it's up to them to even say, like, and we're going to put it on this rocket. Like, here's our whole proposal. And then NASA selects the winner.
So that's different than what they're doing now, because you're saying that like NASA's designing the satellites and the telescopes and then telling them to build it, and there's like this whole communication. It's the whole designer working with a bad client or client from hell kind of thing. But what you're saying is like just have them completely build it and just say, here are the specs that we need. Mm-hmm. Go do the voodoo that you do so well, and then they just go for it.
That's like, look at the Commercial Crew Program. That's basically what it was. We need this amount of mass. We need people on it. We need blah, blah, blah. It needs to be a certain amount of safe. This is how much we're willing to pay you for those services, right? And then people submitted bids. We had Sierra Nevada. We had, as Boeing and SpaceX. And originally there's a few others that even bid on it at the very initial phase. And we ended up with a bunch of different ideas. And they just looked at the products in front of them and said, I like this one. And look at in the same time. So in the same time frame, actually less time frame. This happened after initially they developed Orion. The Orion was already in development way before Commercial Crew Program. Orion was in development for the Constellation Program, which started in 2000. I don't even know when, like a long time ago. They were doing the old school. Here's our capsule we want. Lockheed Martin, go build it. And then years later, they said, we want people to go to ISS. Tell us what you're going to do. Boom, you have all of a sudden Starliner and Dragon Capsule. And they're done and ready to fly way before Orion. And for both of those programs are about half of what Orion has cost so far.
Okay. This is actually very clarifying for me, because I was always confused by the difference between how they're running like the Commercial Crew Program and the fact that they've always worked with Boeing and they've always worked with Lockheed Martin. Like we talked about that Apollo 11 movie, the documentary. There was a scene, there was one shot in the control room where it was kind of like dollying past all these rows of people working at these terminals, and like one line said Boeing, like they had shirts on that said Boeing on their back, and the next one said McDonnell Douglas. Mm-hmm. And it was like, it just kind of like struck out to me, or it reinforced the whole idea that there were private contractors that were a big part of this whole thing. It wasn't just a bunch of government suits or whatever. But I always wondered what the difference was there, because when we were talking about them working with Boeing, working with SpaceX, I'm like, yeah, but they've always worked with Boeing. But yeah, what you're saying makes more sense. I get it now. Like they're actually saying, here's the specs, and you build it to these specs, as opposed to them sort of overseeing. And because NASA's Achilles heel is always that when there's a new Congress the next year, when there's a new president, whatever, their entire vision changes. Yes. And these contractors are just kind of sitting here like, dude, come on. I mean, as somebody who has worked as a writer on contract and on freelance, and having to deal with this like client that just never knows what they want, that's how I personalize it so that I understand it. Yes, because that's exactly what I've dealt with.
Exactly.
But what's interesting now, what's going on in my head, this is just free flow of consciousness kind of thing, which is kind of how I live my life. It kind of, to me, puts even more weight on the importance of the Commercial Crew Program, because it's not just that we're getting new flights up to space, which is incredibly important, but it's sort of forming a whole new model for how they can work with their private companies. Exactly. And yeah, you're right. We need to clarify that NASA's always hired private contractors to build their stuff. Like NASA does very little the actual like nuts and bolts, right?
but it's always been their job to kind of say what they need, or it's been Congress's job and the White House's job to say this is the kind of mission we want to do. NASA, you do it. And then the old model was NASA, you say what it's going to take to do this, and then you find someone to do it. You find a contractor to do it. And of course they bid on it. It's not like they just blindly say, oh, well, we have Boeing to do this. They can do this. It's more like, they'll still get a bid on who can build a tank and stuff. But a lot of the reason why SLS exists is because there were this was kind of to salvage a lot of jobs that got lost during the space shuttle program. And that's politically charged, but it is the reality of it. Like, if there weren't Congress people, I forget the main one that has, I don't remember what congressman it is, but there's a Congress person that has a lot of incentive to keep Boeing's SLS program going because it would lose a lot of high-paying jobs in his state. And that's probably one of the main reasons that SLS exists.
It's a jobs program.
Yeah. And I get it. Like, you worked on the shuttle program. You have these, the RS-25 engine. These hydrogen tanks. You have the friction stir welding thing set up in your state to be able to do this and that. That's great. But you know what else is great is when people are able to do the same thing for 1/10 the cost. Like,
when it actually goes up.
Yeah, when it actually performs.
When it actually goes up in the air.
And I would have loved, I believe SLS and Orion were the right idea at the time when the space shuttle program was ending. It made sense. Like, hey, we did low Earth orbit. Let's build a big, huge rocket. If that big, huge rocket had flown 3 years ago, I think it would still be kind of valid now, 3 or 4 years ago. But unfortunately, and some of this, I'm not blaming Boeing. I'm not blaming, Lockheed Martin. It's just the system they're set up in, unfortunately, gets underfunded each year. But there's always going to be sunk costs of keeping people on staff to do this stuff. That costs money. But you're not paying them enough to actually get the stuff actually done either. Because Congress isn't quite, they're like, well, let's just, we'll earmark $1 billion for SLS and Orion. You know what I mean? Like, so they're not quite getting the money to get it done either. So they're in this weird purgatory as well. No one's happy. Like, I mean, Boeing's probably happy because they're making money on a retainer no matter what, same with these other contractors. They're at least making money, but they're not getting the stuff done, and they're just in this weird place, and it's just weird and it doesn't work. They're not on the line for anything.
Hopefully we can be at the start of a new, better way of doing things.
I think I am starting to think that Bridenstine might be the one to take us there, believe it or not.
I actually, I heard he was a climate change denier when he was in Congress, and then he became the head of NASA and became a believer.
I think so.
And on one hand, the cynic in me is like, hey, you're not being paid to deny it anymore. Look at that. and then the other side of me is like, well, maybe he's somebody that got a hold of some data and talked to some people and changed his mind, and we should all be able to do that. So
I was going to say,
either way, I'm glad he came around.
And again, remember, climate change shouldn't be a political thing. I mean, it's scientific. It's here's data that we have collected, and here's what I think happened. Because I went and toured Goddard once with Dr. Michelle Thaler, and she showed me literally a project they're working on that can measure the tree canopies of the entire jungle, all trees around the entire world, and map them within millimeter precision in a matter of a year. Yeah. And she goes, look, this is how we actually have data that, when there's a correlation between high carbon dioxide here, the trees do this. And we have actual data on this stuff. She's like, this isn't, we can measure how deep she's showing me all these things that they actually are measuring, and people don't even know that. They just think people are predicting things. It's like, here's correlational data. Here's all the different layers of this stuff. People aren't just making this up, they're, and the way the scientific method works, it isn't saying, I believe our Earth is getting warmer. Where's some data that tells me that? No, it's you collect the data and you see where that takes you, That's basically what Ben's slogan is, free the data and your mind will follow, or whatever, something like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is.
Exactly it.
I mean, that's what it is, though. Is you collect data. You collect a bunch of it. You collect all of it without really knowing what it's going to do. And when you do that, you find correlations and you come up with hypotheses that that follow the data. And that's what has been going on for 30 years, you know? So for Jim Bridenstine to walk in the door at NASA, I'll bet you it didn't take him long to talk to some of the smartest people in the world, showing him what they've been studying for the past 20 years and saying, like, you know, it's a good thing we have these probes up there telling us what's going on here, because no one seems to be listening down here. I bet it doesn't take him very long to go from, like, yeah, I don't really know, to, like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you though. Like I didn't know anything really about him when he first, you know, got the job, but I've been pretty impressed. He's been better than I guess I expected. So.
And the important thing to remember here is this person is obviously in a political position in a government agency. Like, they are a political figurehead, really, for better or for worse. So it has the power to. They have a lot of power in, you know, in their job, and they have a lot of influence from government, a lot of influence in politics. So it can be a scary place to have someone, if you disagree with some of the stuff that they're going to be championing. It can be a scary thing, but he's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, he
really is. And like, again, I was slow to I left myself open to him, you know, but he's really done a good job of making a name for himself and for NASA, and changing some things that I think a lot of us have been yelling at the TV about for too long, you know?
Well, we spent a lot of time talking about NASA today. We don't normally talk about NASA. We're usually more on the SpaceX thing, but it's good. We need to keep tabs on him.
Yeah, and just a friendly reminder here for everyone. NASA is extremely important. They're going to be doing things, and they do things in the certifying and their data set and their scientists and their so many things that they do are unbelievably important. So I want to reiterate that I don't think it's NASA's job to build an SLS in Orion. I think that's poor use of NASA's resources. I think NASA's resources should be, we want to explore Jupiter. We want to explore Mars. We want to get samples home from Mars. What's the best way we can do that? And now that we have commercial programs and commercial crews and commercial providers capable of some of those services, it's going to do everyone better. And I don't want NASA's budget cut. Yeah. I think NASA needs a beefy budget as possible so they can actually do all this stuff, and do it soon, and do it now. And by being aggressive with programs and timelines and money, I think it's just going to speed the whole thing up, and it just snowballs. And we get into a new era of actually having, you know, tons of new probes, tons of new missions, actual human exploration beyond Earth. Like, it's really exciting, and it requires NASA being a strong leader and, you know, providing us with all the back end for it.
Yeah.
That's my story.
I'm with you. There you go.
So
well, we have a why don't they just that I think we should move on to.
I agree.
Going back to SpaceX.
I think we should move on to why don't they just.
Do you have that to pull up or anything?
Yeah, here we go. Ready for this one? Why don't they just? This is from Samuel Voss at Wheat for Sheep 18. I like that name. Why don't they just catch the Dragon capsules with Mr. Stevens?
I wonder if Wheat for Sheep is some kind of like charity that he works for.
I was thinking it might be from what's that game? Catan. Do you ever play Settlers of Catan?
Settlers of Catan?
Yeah.
I've never played any of those like sort of role playing games. I've never.
That one's kind of like Monopoly.
I've never had that.
And like it's like Monopoly meets railroad game. So I don't know if it's like role playing. It's a strategy game.
Oh, okay. Well.
Anyway, It feels like that. So what do you think? Why don't they just...
So clearly I've never played it because I don't even know what it is.
But. Why don't they just catch Dragon capsules with Mr. Steven, huh?
You want me to take a shot at it?
Yeah.
So first of all, Samuel literally just won the luck of the draw because that was one of... I lost count.
Yes.
How many people asked this question? Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's like a shared consciousness out there that everybody tapped into, or just seeing it splash down made a lot of people think that. But I don't know. Like we got tons of those.
Yeah, we did.
So, you know, I'm a pretty tactful, nice, sweetheart kind of guy. But I'm just gonna be honest with you. When I first saw this question come up, I thought, well, that's a dumb question.
Really?
And And then I got another person asking that, and then another, and then another. And after a while, I was like, this still seems like a dumb question to me. But maybe I'm missing something, because clearly it's on a lot of people's minds. So and at that point, it was clear that we were going to be talking about it. So I went and I looked up some stuff. And the more I looked at how that whole thing would work, the more I think, yeah, that's just a bad idea.
Tell us why.
That's just a really, really bad idea.
Tell us why.
Well, first of all, the Crew Dragon capsule, according to the numbers that I saw, loaded with return cargo is something like 27,000 pounds, which is like 12,000 something kilograms. And you want to catch that in a net? And I mean, first of all, I have doubts that a net could hold it. I have doubts that those giant spindly spider arms would be strong enough to hold it. Not to mention, by the way, like 90 seconds previous to it hitting this net, it was 5,000 degrees coming through the atmosphere.
I didn't even
and
think
now you're
about
going to
that.
land it on top of a glorified shrimp trawler. I would not want to be on that boat. And on top of all that, that much weight, however many meters off the ocean surface it is, would make it like super top heavy. I don't know how that would be stable. It seems like it would easily tip over and cause problems.
Wow.
Now, if they wanted to, and I think we mentioned this last time, maybe, if they came down with a parachute and had, say, the autonomous drone ship out there, of course I still love you or whatever, something like that, and it maybe a couple 100 meters off the ground, or maybe less than that, it, gets rid of the parachutes and then just kind of propulsively brings itself down. That's kind of interesting, but that's on a ship that's made to carry big, heavy things like that.
And at that point, why don't they just land it on land?
Well, yeah. But anyway, so that's my take on it. I think that would be a terrible idea. I would not want to be on that ship. But tell me where I'm wrong.
No, you know what? You brought up two things. To be honest, the weight and the heat I didn't even think about, and those are extremely valid because that is, I can't remember off the top of my head how much one of those fairing halves weighs, but I think they're already stretching it. Say one of those.
I looked. It's like 4,000 pounds.
Okay, so 1/5, 1/6.
Yeah.
So it's 15%. So yeah. So, and I think they're already pretty close to the absolute weight where if it lands on one edge, or whatever, I'm guessing the ship is going to be pretty side heavy and can barely overcome that. So now you add 6 times that weight, and I just don't think that's going to turn out well. You're right. But the biggest thing is, when you're dealing with crew safety, is crew safety. Period. If you have anything, NASA is so worried about crew returning home safely. You have all these new variables all of a sudden. Where you're like, well, what if it hits a pole? What if it hits this thing, turns upside down, goes upside down in the water, and it's hard to flip over? And all of a sudden you have all these things, there's so many new variables that you're entering that have nothing to do with crew safety, and instead it puts crew at risk. To me, that's NASA's number one thing is we ain't going to do anything riskier than necessary. And when you heard the pre-launch press conference, you heard a lot about that attitude. It's like, or the flight readiness review, I mean. They talked a lot about how, listen, when we go through this stuff, we literally take and calculate the risk. We learn what the risk is. We learn, of course, a rocket could blow up at any time. But we learn what's it take to make a rocket blow up, how often, what are the odds of this? We actually calculate those actual things. And then we decide whether or not that's an acceptable risk or if it's too risky. And if it's too risky, we keep working on it until we figure out how to mitigate that risk. And that's how they operate on literally everything. Parachutes, parachute cutters, seats, heat shields, everything is operating in that way. So all of a sudden you're saying...
And everything has a redundancy.
Yes. And all of a sudden now you're saying, listen, we're going to add in this thing that doesn't make it safer for the crew. And potentially puts them at higher risk with unknown variables that we'd have to now do new studies on and figure out the weight of the thing and the thing of this and the melting point of the straps and all, everything. All of a sudden you're adding all these new variables. It's just not going to be worth it. Not to mention Mr. Stevens like it can travel quickly in a fairly straight line, you know, and the fairing and the parachute are intended to go in a fairly straight line. So you're removing basically the variables there of, you know, like it all of a sudden kind of drifting left or right. You pretty much know its track. And if Dragon's landing straight down and Mr. Stevens is missing it, it can't like side strafe very quickly. You know, it can go in a straight line quickly, but if it's like 10 feet off on one side, it has to like, 3 meters, it spin around and like, you know, readjust. It's just not that nimble in that sense. It's fast and it's pointy, but it's not like, you know, I don't know. It's hard to explain. So I just don't.
And I would also point out it's been an utter failure so far. Every single time. I mean, I have no doubt that eventually they will catch one. I don't know if it's going to become standard practice or not, but I think they'll pull it off eventually. But so far, they've never been able to do it. So to jump from that to let's put the lives of some very important people on the line and try to. I was just like, I mean, maybe if it was something that they'd perfected and they'd pulled it off many, many times or something, that would be different. But still, it's the weight issue, and it's just way too risky.
It's just adding a new layer of risk that's unnecessary. And and SpaceX is already going to be, you know, reusing these Dragon capsules, and it's up to them. It's up to SpaceX to decide whether or not it's worth it for them to do a full refurbishment or just build a new one. You know, and I think it would be interesting to test it out on a cargo version of Dragon 2 if that's something they want to do. And maybe something like they build a bigger version of the autonomous spaceport drone ship and stretch a huge net over that or something. Or, I mean, it's SpaceX. I'll never say they won't do it. I'll never say they won't try. Exactly. I'll leave it up to them to try the Wile E. Coyote stuff. But specifically with Mr. Steven, those seem to be the risks, I think, and the heat and the weight and the they probably can't, and the safety and the what's it actually gain them in the long run. Yes, it helps refurbishment, but worth it? I don't know. Yeah.
And the only reason I could think that we would want to do something or even try something like that would be to prevent water damage, but I'm looking at all the scorch marks on it and I'm thinking the coming through the atmosphere is probably far more damaging than the water is.
They're both pretty nasty. I'm
kind of talking out of my butt because I'm not sure, but I feel like that's far more of a anyway.
They're both really nasty. Salt water gets in a lot of places though, you know, and can damage a lot of things. But I think they made some improvements to Dragon 2 to hopefully make it more refurbishable compared to Dragon 1. So they learned a lot of lessons from Dragon 1 and refurbishing it. And I'm sure they just ended up creating new seals and new, like, we'll just tighten this up or whatever. So hopefully it's just better.
Yeah. Well, so to everybody who asked that question, there were a lot of you. Thank you for asking that. You're all monsters. It's a terrible idea, but keep them coming. No offense. We love you.
I actually forgot about your reasons, and that does make it a pretty bad idea. But I didn't think it was a terrible idea. And I think it's a valid question because it makes sense. Like, they're trying to catch a thing that's falling from space on parachutes. Over here, why aren't they trying to catch this other thing that's falling from space on parachutes? Like, it totally makes sense. I get why it's a question.
I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I was just being funny. I was just being a jokester.
But everyone's
I'm not calling anybody a monster.
Except you did.
Except I did, and they might be. You never know.
It's true. What if they are?
I don't know what they do in their homes.
I don't know either. Well, we should probably wrap it up with me because there's going to be probably a whole hour Ben talking about the Model Y. So
yeah, exactly. So for those listeners who keep asking for a longer episode, you're about to get one.
You're getting like a two-parter here. You're getting like 2 weeks worth in 1 week. So hope you like it.
Well, I guess I should wrap with asking what you're working on these days.
Oh yeah.
Or what you're working on right now.
Let's see. To be perfectly honest, I'm taking like a mini sabbatical. Just like, I just need some time off. DM1 broke me, I think. It's taking a strain on the home. It's taking a strain on my mental health. I'm like, man, I got physically sick. I'm still scripting a little bit, but like not putting any pressure on myself. I think it's just important sometimes to like take just a little step back and be like, okay. So my next 2 videos are probably still the Raptor engine, which I'm working on. Yeah, you might need to learn a lesson here. You work too hard.
What bags under my eyes? What are you talking about?
So I'm going to be doing a video about Raptor. I'm probably also going to do a video about whether or not 2 Falcon Heavies can replace a single SLS.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that sounds fun.
I would watch that.
Yeah. I want to do fun ones like that. So, yeah. That's what I'm working on. So,
cool fodder.
Well, good luck talking with Ben. He'll probably take up at least an hour. So,
I assume you're going to be watching the reveal tonight.
Oh yeah. I'm excited to hear this go from me excited to and us excited to watch the reveal to like all of a sudden the listeners are going to cut to Ben having been to the reveal. So
yeah. So we don't know what's going to happen, but for you listening, wait like 5 seconds. No, I got invited. You got invited too.
Yeah.
Were you wanted
late,
to go?
Apparently. I was apparently too late.
Right?
Yeah, I wanted to go.
We're too late, Simon.
I clicked on it and it said, "Sorry, we're full" or something. Like, oh wait, why'd you send me the invite? I mean, I clicked the link like 9 hours later, but because I got it in the middle of the night.
I got the invite and I saw it that morning. I wasn't really ever thinking about going. You know, I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm interested, but I wasn't really thinking about going. And of course now it's tonight, and I'm kind of like, man, I kind of wish I'd gone. How often do you get a chance to do something like that? You know?
I know.
But,
real quick, last minute guesses. What do you think there's going to be a bonus thing tonight? And if so, what do you think? Because I think we talked about this last week, I think, but
yeah.
Has it changed?
Well, okay, so Ben totally trolled us last night on Messenger. He said that there was going to be some news last night, and I never heard anything. Yeah, thanks, Ben. I'm going to have to bring that up tomorrow. I'll put it this way. I kind of hope there is some kind of surprise, because there's a part of me that thinks it's going to be... There's a part of me that worries it's going to be a little bit of a letdown. That's just going to be like, hey, here's a Model 3 with a different configuration.
Yeah.
And it's not so much that I'm going to be let down by it, but like that's what the shorts are going to be doing, is immediately like, oh, there's nothing new here, and they're going to make a whole bunch of hay out of that. So I feel like that's why I feel like there is going to be some kind of surprise, because they're going to need a little something to make it more, noteworthy. Yeah. But I could be wrong. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
I think my 3 in order. I think number 1, we might see a refresh of S and X with the new battery packs, or the new range. I don't think they'll necessarily talk about the batteries. They'll just be like, oh yeah, by the way, we were updating the Model S and X, and here's the new range on them. And it'll be like 450 miles or something crazy. 650 kilometers, whatever. So Trigger. I think that's basically number 1, most likely in my opinion, just because I think it's coming very soon, and it would make sense to do it here. Yeah. The next most likely thing would be having the Tesla Roadster come out, having it hover.
Oh, the SpaceX package with the nitrogen thrusters?
Yep.
Or, is that right? Nitrogen?
Yeah, or coal gas thrusters. Yeah, nitrogen.
Yeah, okay.
Wouldn't that be nuts? Wouldn't that be insane if he drives a Roadster out, and then all of a sudden, like, as he's about to get out, first it just... and like does like a
where we're going, we don't need roads.
Does like a 90-degree turn, a meter off the ground. Like, now we're talking. Just to show off, just purely to show off. I think I could see that happening.
Yeah.
And if so, I'll lose my mind a little. And then third most likely, I think after that would be the truck. I wouldn't be surprised if they tease us with the truck.
Well, you saw the picture of the wrapped truck that was on a Tesla, truck.
I did.
Like there was a, what do you call it, where it has all the different cars on it, and then on the back was a truck. It was clearly a truck, but it was wrapped, so you couldn't see like what it was, and a lot of people thought that it looked like an F-150, but why would they have an F-150 on a Tesla trailer?
Trailer.
Another reason why I think there might be a surprise is like that Tesla, it seems like they almost never talk about. It seems like whenever they make an announcement, they make several announcements.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I hope we hear more about V3 rollouts and stuff like that too. And I hope it's a big event. I hope it's like a really cool. Yeah. I hope it's not just a Model Y. I will be disappointed if it's like, here's the Model Y, here's what it does. Good night. I'll be disappointed.
Yeah.
So.
Same here. Yeah, I'll be disappointed if there's not some kind of surprise, but.
So let's.
But then
find
it's not
out.
A surprise because you're expecting it.
Here we go. Let's introduce our friend Ben. Ben, how was the Model Y event? All right. All
All right, so here we are. We got Ben Sullins, who enjoyed, and I hope experienced the Tesla Model Y event last night. So how you feeling today?
Good, not too hungover. It was in Tesla terms, still a good Tesla party. A bit more measured than before, a bit more tamer, smaller. It was in the actual design studio building where they, make the new models. So that's much smaller than the previous events that were either at the Fremont factory, massive, or the airplane hangars that are right next to the design studio where they had the Roadster and Semi event. So a bit smaller, a bit calmer. I think overall, not a lot of surprises, everyone, it's funny, there were a lot of people like, what do you think the surprise is going to be? And he never promised a surprise.
We all just expected it.
So, yeah. But the last one, when there was a surprise at the semi-truck event, he had said there would be a surprise. Okay. Yeah, maybe we just, we kind of got our hopes up, but no big surprises, but still a good event, and really excited about the Model Y.
Well, so the last thing that people listening or watching this podcast heard was me and Tim making speculation as to what was going to happen, and I was very much like, I totally think there's going to be a surprise because I think the Model Y is just basically going to be a Model 3 with a hatchback and a bit more room, and it turns out that's exactly what it was. And so I was fully like, oh, there's got to be some other thing. They're not just gonna, and that's all it was. And I was kind of like, okay, all right. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a solid car and everything, but I mean, what was the reaction of the crowd there? Were people excited about it, or I mean, they were obviously the biggest Tesla fanboys in the world there, so.
Yeah. So everyone's it's hard not to be just kind of drink the Kool-Aid when you're at, an event like this, 5 feet away from Elon, his whole family's over there, those kind of things. So yeah, it's hard not to get super excited. I mean, I spent a lot of time just kind of oogling at the Roadster that was there. Just like, oh, hello, you. So
you will be mine. Oh, yes.
Yeah, there's no big...
You will be mine.
Yeah. So there was no, there was a little bit of, I think, a little bit of deflation on people's expectations, right? Just because the semi-Roadster event was like, even talking to the Tesla people, they were like, yeah, we're not going to top that one again. Like, that was as amazing of an event as there ever could be. And even, the people I was there, that I was there with, we all kind of knew what we were going to see. Like you said, it's a Model 3 with a hatchback and more room. Two things that were a bit of a surprise were the 7-seater, the third row seats, which were yet to see in person. And then the other thing was the power lift gate, which actually got a big cheer.
So that's cool. The back. The back hatch, it's like you don't have to physically do it; it automatically does it. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the Model S essentially. Well, and the Model X too, obviously. But I think myself included, that was one of those things where it was like, oh yeah, that costs extra money. It adds cost to the car, but you're like, it's a $60,000 car. Come on, this is like a pretty basic feature,
Yeah.
And it is one that you notice it. Like if you've had it and then you go to a Tesla and you don't have it, it's these little features like that actually over the years of using the car add up, I think, to a less than stellar user experience.
Yeah. Well, that's something I've never had, so it's not something I would miss. And when the Model 3 didn't have it, there was a lot of like, why doesn't it have it? And I'm just kind of like, it doesn't matter to me. But I can definitely understand for a family car, your hands are going to be full more often. You're going to want that, extra help back there. So I was watching this online, and I guess my biggest frustration was they never really showed the back of the car on the online thing. Like I never actually saw the back of it, and I was like, that's the part that's like the most different, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a frustration for me.
The camera guy did have a hard time getting back there. I saw it was funny. He was trying to walk around because they had all of them lined up on the stage. It was a small stage.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to walk around the Model S and just got stuck. And because their camera guy for that thing has like, it's like a body rig. It's like an exoskeleton you wear with like all this crazy amount of gear and stuff. So he had to come all the way around and go the other way. And I don't know, maybe that's why. But no, I mean, and we have plenty of footage of it. I got a test ride in it, things like that. So they didn't let us open up the back and see back there. I think just really it wasn't so much about not showing it. It was more about there were 300 people that they were trying to give test rides, and they just don't have time to be doing that.
Yeah.
But in fact, one of the comms person people said that if you stay after basically every test ride is done, you can have your way with it and just look at every inch of it. So I didn't do that because I left at like midnight and they were still doing test rides. So I don't know if anyone else did. But yeah, no, I think it's fantastic, man. It's exactly what we as a family were missing in the Model 3. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be it's all the best stuff of the Model 3, but adding in just a couple of the features that were missing to make it the perfect family car. I mean, if you're like young, single, live in an urban area, go with the Model 3. It's amazing. It's perfect. Yeah. If you have a family and stuff, this is what you're going to want for sure. And if you want like the more luxury, advanced, more bells and whistles, S and X are your winners.
Yeah.
So I think it adds to the lineup like perfectly.
Cool. I mean, I was kind of wondering if it would cannibalize the Model 3 sales. Of course, that's what a lot of the shorts out there are saying, and the negative press or whatever. But I guess when it comes down to it, it's like if you don't have a family and you don't, unless you just really like that sort of crossover design, or maybe you need the extra space because you're a musician or whatever, then maybe you would hold off for the Y. But otherwise, maybe it's a good thing that they didn't add some big special whiz bang feature on it that you're not going to see on the Model 3, because then people might be like, oh, but I want that. I'll have to wait for the Y, and then that would cannibalize the Model 3 sales,
Yeah, it's a fair point. I remember we talked about it on the show a couple weeks ago. I know Tim was very excited about, it's not going to have mirrors or something like that. Yeah. And my sentiment then is what we ended up seeing is like, I'm kind of okay with boring. Yeah. I'm kind of okay with a very mainstream version of the Model X. The Model X is if you've never been in one,
it's over the top.
Rent one on website. It's insane. It is way insane. And so the vast majority of people do not want or need any of that stuff. So this is perfect, right? It fits the segment. It is the largest auto segment by sales in the U.S. Something like almost 40% of the U.S. market are crossover SUVs. Despite the number one vehicle being sold as a truck, but overall the whole segment, this is the largest by like double the next segment, and so Tesla has almost a perfect lineup now. The only thing missing is the truck, and we'll see that in a few months.
Hopefully,
maybe.
No, it's funny. I mean, looking at the pictures of it and the video that's online. From the front, I honestly, I feel like if I saw it out in public, I would just think it was a Model 3. It looked just like it. But from the side, it almost has a bit of a Honda CR-V kind of shape to it, just a little bit more of like a sporty looking,
I think it looks better.
Oh, really?
It looks better than the 3. I mean, the back end has like a little bit more aggressive kind of styling to it. Uh-huh. And I mean, I love the back of the Model 3 as well, but no, I actually feel like it's like when you're in high school and you're like the scrawny teenager, and then you get to college and you put on the freshman 15, and then you look a little better, like filled out, right? Like you need a little bit more. To me, that's kind of how I feel about the Model 3 or the Model Y. Is it's like I think it looks better actually. Okay. Again, all the best stuff from the Model 3. Plus, the things that it was missing.
Yeah.
So, I'm stoked. We ordered one. So.
Okay, cool. And I think it's interesting that they're not doing reservations this time. They're just taking, you can just go ahead and place an order and configure it and everything, right?
That's how the S and X were. I think they learned, because from an accounting standpoint, now is when everyone tunes out and goes to sleep. From an accounting standpoint, you don't actually necessarily want that giant accounts receivable balance that just sits there for 3 years. So I don't know if deposits are refundable at this point. I mean, I'm looking at my reservation right now. Not that I would refund it, but I don't know. So it's one of those things. Or I guess maybe, they have a new refund policy or something. So it was different. I was stoked that the configurator was up, immediately.
Yeah.
It took me 3 tries to order mine. The website kept crashing. So people say demand problem. I say the website crashed because too many people were ordering it.
Yeah.
Well, so
obviously it's too soon to know what kind of how many orders came in. I mean, it'll be interesting to see in the next 24 and 48 hours what kind of numbers they put up with it. Because you keep seeing these headlines saying there's no demand, and I'm like, that's why they had to go to China and Europe, because there's no demand. There's clearly demand over there. They wouldn't be going there, right? I mean,
this is going to be easily the best selling. The Model 3 is going to be the best selling luxury sedan in Europe, no doubt at all, because of the size of it, just flat out. And then China is the biggest EV market in the world. China sells more EVs in 1 year than the rest of the world combined. So, not being in China is actually a dumb move, right? They should have went to China earlier, honestly. But anyways, no, I mean, we actually did get some of that at their presentation. They showed the Gigafactory 3 mock-up and the kind of current state, putting stakes in the ground kind of a thing. But no, I mean, man, I think this is a big milestone because it kind of really opens up the market for a lot more people that looked at the Model 3. They saw people like me saying it's not good for families, and now this solves all those kind of missing pieces.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should talk about the specs of it. How did those look to you?
Yeah, great.
I mean, you kind of already knew it because they had given the sort of percentage differences from that and the Model 3. How close were you?
That's right. Yeah, let me see. It was actually very close. Off by a couple $100 here and there. Let me see if I have the actual, because I had a slide of it, and I sent it to my guy to do the thing. Here we go.
He had his guy do the thing, people. Okay. You heard it here first.
Yeah. All right, let me just pull it up on the website so we can talk through it. So they did announce the standard range, 230 miles standard model, 230 miles of range, 120 mile per hour top speed, 5.9 seconds 0 to 60 with a $39,000 price tag. So under $40,000 for the standard model. That's pretty good. I think it's a little bit more than 10%, or just right about 10% more than the standard Model 3. I'm not sure, the 230 miles of range, I mean, that's fine, but you're not in road trip range at that point, I don't think. The long range rear wheel drive has a 300 mile range and comes in at $47,000. So I think that's actually going to be probably the most popular one. And that's coming in fall of 2020 is what they said. But then on the website and on the reservation, it said they're going to begin production late next year. So that would be after fall 2020, I guess. And then you have the dual motor all-wheel drive, 280 miles of range, and then the performance version, 280 miles of range as well, with a 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds for $60,000. Now, the dual motor all-wheel drive at $51,000, I think is also a hell of a buy. I think that's a great option for a lot of people. So, it's very reasonable, I think. It's cheap, it's more expensive than, maybe, your Honda CR-V or something like that. But overall, I think it's actually a very good value, especially considering the lower price point or the lower maintenance and all those kind of things.
Yeah. I got the video of it up on the screen on the website.
Yeah, there you go. There's the back of it. I haven't seen this footage yet.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
This is the only actual video of it driving around on the site that I can find.
There's a press kit stuff, but it doesn't have the actual footage like this. It just has the event, and it's a couple photos. So, the glass roof is amazing, man. So, the front of the Model Y is just like the Model 3. Like when you're sitting in the front of it, other than sitting higher, it's identical.
Okay.
But then the glass roof is just gorgeous. It's a full panel. So there's no crossbeam in there at all. Which is just...
So you actually even have more glass than in the 3.
Yeah, if you can find it, Tesla posted it on Instagram, I think. It was like, view of the glass roof. And it's nuts, man. Yeah, so you're looking at the back of it. It has to be on here somewhere. Oh, they do show it with white interior. So you can't order white interior yet.
Oh.
Which, you shouldn't be ordering that anyways, which is my view.
It's an objective fact.
Yeah, pretty much. Tested it, Yeah, okay, so that's a little image. So they did post something about on Twitter or Instagram that actually had like a time lapse of just seeing out the all glass roof. So the Model S has this as well, where you can get an option without a sunroof, and it's just there's no crossbeam at all except for the front pillar, the front headliner, and it's stunning, especially if you're in the back. It's really cool. Yeah, 65 cubic feet of storage, so that's on par with the Model S. I think the Model S is 66 or something like that.
Yeah.
And for cars this size, that's actually very good as well.
Yeah, and it's shorter
Seating
than
up
the
to
Model
7
S
adults.
too, right?
I want to see that. Yeah, it didn't seem bigger at all from its footprint. I'm sure it is by an inch or two or something, but yeah. That's the one I ordered right there, by the way, the performance model.
Of course you did.
With
Speed Demon.
Of course I did. With the full self-driving I ordered.
Oh, okay.
Which I didn't. Now I would order. So that was an $8,000 upgrade because there are those 3 key features which were previously included in like autopilot that me and you have, enhanced autopilot, but now are not. And so considering this car is coming out in a year or two, I'm like, yeah, let's go for that, right? Because it'll have the updated hardware, and in theory, all those features will be pretty fleshed out by that point. So, it'll be pretty good. Oh, there you go. So you have the specs available right there. That's perfect.
Yeah, so that's the standard range that's up right now. So there are 4 different models: the performance, the long-range all-wheel drive, the long-range rear-wheel drive, wheel, and the standard range. So the standard range gets 10 miles more than the Model 3. It looks like there's 230 miles on that one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I wonder if that's just the EPA estimate, though. We'll see.
Yeah, I guess we'll
obviously.
see. So you were talking about the full self-driving
video,
thing. That he did kind of double down on that a little bit. Let me go back to the camera. I think we're.
Yeah.
Here we go. So like he doubled down on that. It's going to be fully capable by the end of the year, regulations permitting, and that's interesting.
But to be clear, if you listen to him on the ARK Invest podcast, which is fantastic interview that they had with him, it's very short. It's like 15, 20 minutes. So it's like 1/5 one of our episodes. He talks about it. He says, it'll be feature complete, which means that they feel confident in the software and the development of it, and will start to roll it out. And then obviously you have regulations and things like that. But a person is still responsible. It's not a fully autonomous level 4 vehicle. I think it'll still be considered level 2, which means, because level 3 means that or it might be level 3 where you can expect that it will drive you in nearly all conditions, but you are still there to take over if and when needed. Yeah. And that gets kind of in a hairy spot where it will, it's hard. It's one of those things where like do you remember your best friend's phone number? No.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've been programmed now so long that we never would have to remember something like that. But when you first got cell phones, that was a concern, right? Like, oh, I won't remember people's phone numbers. It's the same concept, I think, here, where right now we're like, oh yeah, well, I'll pay attention. It'll be fine. But then after a year of using it, you're not going to be paying attention.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think
I'm a little worried about that.
Who was it that wanted to just skip level 3 entirely and go straight to level 4?
She was a fighter pilot.
Fighter pilot?
Yeah, it was a woman that's a former fighter pilot, right? That was talking about it?
Oh, no, there was one of the companies, like Nissan or one of those guys were talking about, like they wanted to skip level 3 altogether and just go straight to level 4 for that reason that, once people kind of learn to get comfortable with it and tune out, that they're not going to be as ready to take over when it's necessary. I think there's a good point there, but also how do you test all those features without going through that stage,
Yeah, Elon talked about it as well. He said, the people that get in accidents in autopilot are not the newbies. It's the people that have had it for a couple years that have been kind of lulled into this overconfidence with it. Which I say, just come to LA and try to drive with it for a couple days, and your confidence will be shattered in it.
Yeah. For me, mostly, I mean, unless I'm taking a long road trip, which I've only done a few in it so far. I mean, I use autopilot just kind of here and there, just kind of be like, I just want to see what it can do here, and just kind of let it do its thing. But I've got my hands like right there ready to take over at any time. Because, I mean, one thing that I've found is that, yes, they can't read stoplights or stop signs or anything yet, but if you're on a street with a bunch of stoplights and you're behind people and they're stopping at the stoplight, then your car will stop right along with them, and you can just kind of like keep going. And it's just kind of a neat thing to play with every once in a while and realize that your car can do that. And I was thinking about it the other day. They have the map. They know when an intersection's coming up that might have a stoplight or a stop sign. So it seems like they would be able to integrate into the cameras to look for that specific wavelength of red or green in that specific area of the field of view. I mean, I think it's doable. With some exceptions, probably.
Yeah, no, it's doable, but there's some like imagine trying to do that in Las Vegas, right? With tons of lights blinking and stuff behind. It's not as easy as it may. I mean, it's as Elon said, there are a million edge cases, which is why the Pareto's law here, right? Like we've already got the 80% of this. We've already got the first 80% of self-driving done, but that last 20%. I mean, really. Even that
it's going to take 80% of the effort.
It'd be pretty hard. Yeah, but then that like last 5%, is going to be years and years and years, I think. So, I think we're a long ways away still. But in between now and then, I think we're going to have a ton of advancements, and for all intents and purposes, people will consider it self-driving, right? Already. Like if you get my grandma in the car and we do navigate on autopilot, it does like freeway to freeway changes on its own, turning. I mean, you could easily make the argument that it is self-driving now. But if you're getting into the technical side of it, it's not, right? Yeah. So I think there's a lot of advancements and a lot of benefits that we're going to realize between now and whenever we get to I'm going to go to sleep in the back of the car and it's going to take me there. Whenever we get between here and there, it's going to be a good thing, but it won't be without its issues. We're going to see some bad stuff as well. I think, just how technology progresses.
Well, let's talk about the two biggest announcements last night. I think we can all agree these are the two biggest announcements. One is superchargers in Kazakhstan. Big news.
Yeah. Okay.
Somewhere out there, somebody listening to this in Kazakhstan is like, "Screw you." And the other was...
I was hanging with him. There was a crew of people from Kazakhstan. And
well, that's why they said it.
That's funny. And they're super cool. Yeah, we hung out, we got them out. Yeah.
Borat was nowhere near it.
They said that. No, I think Elon was kind of laughing, but I mean, they were very serious.
Yeah. Well, he said that, and then he said there will be a Tesla on Mars in 10 years.
Sure. Yeah.
That's more
you
Tim's
know what would have
domain.
been really, you know what would have been really kind of coy of him to say is if he was like, we'll have an electric vehicle on Mars, like 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like the rover, like yeah,
Technically,
you could be like, yeah,
we
I
have that
guarantee
now.
we'll have,
Yeah.
yeah, I guarantee in 10 years we will at least have one electric vehicle on Mars. Like, okay, I would take that bet. You know, a Tesla, I don't know.
It just seemed like one of those
Model M.
moments where he just kind of jokes around and says something, and then that's like all anybody talks about the next day. And so far, I haven't seen it blowing up all the headlines or anything, but that stuck out to me.
That was something I wanted to say that I that you mentioned earlier around the number of reservations. With all the heightened scrutiny around Elon's tweets, I don't think we're going to see those numbers until an earnings call, because that would be material information. But see, the thing I don't understand about this, I'd love to talk to somebody that knows SEC stuff. It'd be a very boring conversation, I know, but it'd be like what counts as, so when he tweets it, is that not the company making a statement? Is that, like, he's allowed to make statements about the company, right? So what is wrong with this? Unless it's fraudulent. That was where the one tweet got him in trouble, because what the words he used had a very specific meaning in securities law, and the reality did not match with that definition of the law. So that I understand, that's fair. But if he comes out and says we have 200,000 reservations, that's just him sharing information. Yes, it's material, but if it's real, I don't see the problem with that. But just anyways, my guess is we won't hear any of that until the earnings call, which is only a few weeks away in early April. Or actually, wait, it's usually, we get the production numbers the first week after the quarter ends, then we get the earnings call the first week of the month after it ends. So I guess we're still a month and a half away or something like that. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see that numbers, those data until then.
I am interested to hear, though. There was a lot of talk about this being, I mean, even you were just saying a second ago, like this is probably going to be their biggest seller, and it'll be interesting to see if it has the same reaction that the Model 3 did. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the Model 3 it's hard to beat that hype. I mean, it really is. But just in terms of the data, in terms of how many cars sell in this segment, it makes sense in the basic analysis I've done, that this will overpower the Model 3. I mean, I'm looking at the chart now. So the crossover SUV segment here is just under 40% of the U.S. car market, and the small car segment, if that's where you put the Model 3, is like 12% of the overall market. So if you just look at that, even if they're not even that successful, they'll still sell more Model Ys than they will Model 3s. So interesting.
Well, do you have anything else to add? I know you got a video to get out, and you're probably got a drive ahead of you to get back to San Diego.
That's right, trying to get it there. Just I'm excited about it, and obviously, gonna be excited to take delivery and share that experience with people, because for us, I think this is gonna be hopefully the Tesla we keep for a long, long time. And well, we'll see, but yeah,
because it'll just fit all the needs you have as a family and whatnot.
100%, yeah. It's still small and compact, fun to drive, Model 3 experience in that sense, but solves the kind of problems we had, like fitting kids, and like just going to a beach day in the Model 3 is tough with a kid, because you have to bring umbrellas and like towels and just toys, and it's so much crap you have to take with you. So the Model 3 was pretty tough. So this will be better.
Well, cool. Well, I guess we can go ahead and sign off. So this was a very long episode. This one, on top of what we did with Tim yesterday, it's going to be a pretty decent length, but I think we covered all the bases. So I guess normally we end by asking what you're working on, but clearly you're going to be working on a Model Y video.
Yep, we got Yeah, I think just one of those, and then I don't even know what's next right now. It's just like so hyper focused on it. So yeah, probably a bunch of Model Y stuff.
I have a video on Monday that I'm still working on, which I will be working on as soon as we log off here. But it's on biocentrism. This is like a fringe theory of reality, that like our consciousness creates physical reality. Yeah,
like a Schrodinger's cat of consciousness.
It's sort of, I mean, yeah. It's based on like the quantum observer effect and that kind of thing. And I'll be getting some really.
Oh right.
I'll be getting some interesting comments on this one, I'm sure.
Very cool, man. I'm excited to see it.
Well, I guess we'll catch you next time on our ludicrous future.